The lawn guy called while my daughter was away and whispered that he heard someone crying from my basement. I ran home expecting a break-in, but the house was empty until the sound came back, soft and stopping the second I held my breath. Then I found a moved latch, fresh soil, and a hidden panel by the bulkhead. That's when I realized my home wasn't being haunted, it was being used. The silence in my house was usually a luxury I could not afford. Between my job at the grimly fluorescent dental supply office and raising a 12-year-old girl who had recently discovered the twin religions of sarcasm and slam-shutting doors, silence was a commodity as rare as diamonds. But this week was different. Maya was 300 miles away in Washington, D.C., on her 6th-grade class trip. She was safe, she was chaperoned, and she was presumably rolling her eyes at a tour guide in the Smithsonian. For the first time in months, the house in Maple Hollow belonged entirely to me. I stood in the kitchen with a mug of coffee that was still hot, marveling at the novelty of it. It was Tuesday. The clock on the microwave read 2:45 in the afternoon. I had taken a half day, claiming a migraine, but really, I just wanted to fold laundry without someone asking me where their black hoodie was every 10 minutes. The sunlight slanted through the window above the sink, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. It was peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that people in movies enjoy right before the soundtrack shifts to a minor key. I took a sip of coffee and looked out at the backyard. The grass was getting long. I had hired Evan Pike, a high school senior from 3 streets over, to handle the mowing this season. I saw his beat-up truck parked at the curb, and I could hear the distant drone of his trimmer working along the side of the house. Then the drone stopped. I waited for it to start again. Usually, Evan was a machine, headphones on, focused on getting the job done so he could get back to whatever video games waited for him at home. But the silence stretched on. A minute passed, then 2. My phone buzzed on the counter. I looked at the screen. It was Evan, a small prick of anxiety. The mother instinct that never truly shuts off poked at my chest. I slid the icon over. "Hey, Evan," I said, "everything okay with the mower?" There was a pause. The connection was clear, but his breathing sounded ragged, like he had just run a sprint. "Miss Bryant?" he asked. His voice was pitched higher than usual. Tighter. "I am here. Evan, what is wrong? Did you cut yourself?" "No," he said. "No, nothing like that. Look, I am really sorry to bother you, but I am standing by the bulkhead doors. You know, the ones that lead down to the basement. I know where they are," I said slowly. I set my coffee mug down. The ceramic made a sharp click against the granite. "I was trimming the weeds around the concrete lip," he said. "I turned the motor off to check my line, and I heard something." "What kind of something?" He hesitated. I could hear the wind blowing into his microphone. The rustle of leaves. "It sounds like crying." "Miss Bryant." My grip tightened on the phone. "Crying? You mean like a cat? Or a raccoon? We get raccoons in the gutters sometimes." "No," Evan said. The word was heavy. Final. "It is not an animal. It is a person. It sounds like a woman. Or maybe a kid. It is quiet, like they are trying to muffle it. But I heard it. I put my ear right against the metal door. Someone is down there, and they are crying." The air in the kitchen suddenly felt very cold. "Stay there," I said. "Do not open the doors. I am coming out." I hung up and moved before my brain could fully process the information. I grabbed the spare key from the hook by the fridge, or I reached for it. My hand grasped at empty air. I frowned, looking at the hook. The little brass key for the back door was usually there, on a small ring with a plastic sunflower fob Maya had made in camp. It was gone. I did not have time to think about it. I grabbed my main keys from the counter and ran out the front door, circling around the side of the house toward the backyard. The afternoon sun was bright, mocking the sudden chill in my veins. I rounded the corner and saw Evan standing near the bulkhead. He looked pale beneath his sunburn, his weed whacker lying abandoned in the tall grass. He was backing away from the slanted metal doors that led to my basement, his eyes fixed on them as if they were about to burst open. I slowed my approach, listening. The neighborhood was quiet. A dog barked 2 streets over. A car drove past. "Did you call the police?" I asked, keeping my voice low. "No," Evan said. "I called you. I did not know if you had family staying over, or if Maya came home early." "Maya is in D.C., I said. "And I live alone." I stepped past him, moving toward the bulkhead. The doors were old steel, painted a hunter green that was peeling in jagged strips to reveal the rust underneath. They were heavy and awkward, secured by a slide bolt on the inside. You could not open them from the exterior unless you had a key to the padlock I kept on the handle. But I had stopped using the padlock years ago because the rust had seized it shut. Now, they relied on the internal bolt. I knelt in the grass, the knees of my jeans soaking up the dampness from the ground. I pressed my ear against the warm metal. At first, there was only the rushing of my own blood in my ears. Thump, 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 thump. Then, I heard it. It was faint, drifting up through the layers of concrete and steel. A low, wavering sound. It was rhythmic, a hitch of breath, a shuddering exhale, a soft, high-pitched whimper. It was unmistakably human. It sounded like heartbreak compressed into a tin can. My stomach dropped through the floor. "Is there a way in from the outside?" Evan whispered. "No," I said. "The bolt is on the inside." I stood up, wiping the dirt from my hands. My mind was racing, cycling through the rational explanations that kept trying to assert themselves. A radio left on? No. I did not have a radio in the basement. A TV? The old set down there was unplugged. A neighbor's kid who had snuck in? I walked over to the basement window, a small rectangular pane of glass set into a corrugated metal well half filled with dead leaves. I peered down. The glass was grimy, coated in years of dust and hard water stains. I could not see through it clearly, but I saw the latch. It was a simple sash lock. I was obsessive about checking the locks before bed. It was a ritual I had developed after the divorce, a way of reclaiming my security. I knew exactly how that latch looked when it was fully engaged. The arm should be completely vertical. The latch I was looking at was shifted, just a fraction, maybe 10 degrees to the right, not open, but not fully locked either, as if someone had closed it in a hurry and not pushed it all the way home. "Stay here," I told Evan. "If you see anyone come out these doors, you scream. Do you hear me?" "Yes, ma'am," he said. He looked terrified. I ran back to the front of the house, unlocked the front door, and stepped inside. The silence of the house was no longer peaceful. It was predatory. I moved to the hallway closet and grabbed the heavy Maglite flashlight I kept for storms. I weighed it in my hand. It felt like a solid iron bar. I moved to the door that led to the basement. It was in the kitchen, right next to the pantry. I stared at the white wood. It was closed. I tried to remember if I had left it closed. I usually kept it cracked open for air circulation, to keep the musty smell from settling. It was shut tight. I turned the knob. It turned easily. I pulled the door open and the smell hit me. The cool, damp scent of subterranean earth, unfinished concrete, and laundry detergent. It was the smell of my house, but it felt different now, heavier. "Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed down the wooden stairs. "I have a phone," I shouted, lying. "And I have a gun." I did not have a gun. I had a flashlight and a terrifying amount of adrenaline. Silence answered me. I clicked the flashlight on and descended. The stairs creaked under my weight. 1 step, 2 steps. I swept the beam across the room. The basement was finished in the loosest sense of the word. There was a patch of cheap carpet, a sagging sofa where Maya and her friends watched movies, and the laundry machines in the corner. The rest was storage. Stacks of plastic bins filled with winter coats and holiday decorations. I reached the bottom landing. "Come out," I said. Nothing. I moved through the room, checking behind the sofa, behind the furnace, behind the stack of bins. There was no one. The space was empty. I walked to the bulkhead doors, the interior side. The heavy wooden steps led up to them. I climbed up and checked the slide bolt. It was rusted in place, exactly where it had been for 5 years. It had not been touched. I stood on the stairs. confused. I had heard it. I knew I had heard it. Then, the sound came again. It was closer this time. A soft, jagged intake of breath. I froze. My entire body went rigid. The sound was not coming from the corners. It felt like it was coming from the air itself. Ambient and impossible to pinpoint. "Who is there?" I whispered. The crying stopped instantly. It did not fade out. It did not taper off. It cut off abruptly, the way a person stops breathing when they realize they are being hunted. It was a reactive silence. Whoever, or whatever, was making that sound knew I was standing there. I spun around, shining the light into every shadow. "Show yourself!" I screamed. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator upstairs. I backed up the stairs, keeping the light trained on the room, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I backed all the way to the kitchen, slammed the door, and locked it. Then I shoved a heavy dining chair under the knob. I grabbed my phone and dialed the non-emergency line. My hands were shaking so bad, I had to hit the call button twice. Officer Miller was a man who looked like he had spent the last 20 years sighing. He was heavy-set, with a uniform that strained at the buttons and a face that suggested he had seen everything and was impressed by none of it. He walked through my basement with the casual indifference of a tourist in a boring museum. He shone his light in the corners I had already checked. He poked at a box of Christmas ornaments. "There is nobody down here. Ms. Bryant," he said, his voice flat. "I know what I heard," I said. I was standing at the top of the stairs, refusing to go back down. The gardener heard it too. He was outside. Acoustics are funny things in these old houses. Miller said. He tapped a copper pipe with his flashlight. "Water moving through the pipes, air in the vents. It can sound like voices. It creates harmonics. I had a call last week. Old lady thought there was a choir singing in her attic. Turned out to be a wasp nest vibrating against the soffit." "It was not a wasp nest," I said, trying to keep the shrill edge out of my voice. "It was a woman crying, and it stopped when I spoke." Miller looked at me. His eyes were tired. "Look, you are alone here, right? Daughter away?" "Yes," I said. "House gets quiet," he said. "Mind fills in the gaps. It is natural." He walked toward the bulkhead stairs. I watched him closely. He swept his light over the wooden steps, but he did not climb them. He did not go up to the metal doors to check the bolt. He stopped 3 feet away, swept the beam quickly over the dark wood, and turned back. It was a small thing, a subtle thing, but it felt wrong. If he was being thorough, he would have checked the bolt. He would have checked the seal. But he turned away as if he did not want to look too closely at that specific corner of the dark. "Everything looks secure," he said, walking back toward me. "No signs of forced entry. Windows are intact. Front door was locked. What about the basement window?" I asked. "The latch was moved." He shrugged. "Old sashes slip. Vibrations from the road. Trucks go by. Rattles the house. It happens." He was dismissing me. I was the hysterical single mother. The lonely woman hearing noises in the dark. I could feel the label being applied to me like a sticky name tag. "I will file a report," he said. "We will have a cruiser do a drive-by tonight. But honestly, I think you just have an old house making old house noises." "Thank you." "Officer," I said. My voice was tight. I walked him to the door. I watched him get into his cruiser and drive away. He did not turn on his lights. He did not speed. He just drove away, leaving me alone in the house that was suddenly a stranger to me. Night fell fast. Or maybe it just felt that way because I was dreading it. I locked every door. I checked every window. I pulled the curtains tight. I turned on every light on the first floor until the house blazed like a cruise ship in the dark. I sat on the couch with the TV on, mute, my eyes darting to the hallway every time the house settled. The rational part of my brain was trying to regain control. Miller was probably right. Pipes, echoes, stress. I was tired. I missed Maya. My brain was projecting my own loneliness into auditory hallucinations. But the details needled at me. I picked up my keychain, the main set. I looked at the little plastic fob, the grocery store card, the gym tag I never used. It felt light. I frowned. I usually kept a spare house key on this ring, a plain brass one, just in case I lost the others. I fingered through the keys: car key, office key, mom's house key. The spare was gone. I stared at the ring. Had I taken it off? I tried to remember. Maybe I gave it to my mother? No. She had her own set. Maybe I gave it to the neighbor. Tessa? No. Tessa had a code for the garage keypad. My heart began to thump a heavy rhythm again. I stood up and walked to the front door. I unlocked it and opened it a crack to look at the doormat. It was a thick choir mat that said, "Welcome" in fading black letters. It was crooked. I was a creature of habit. When I came home, I kicked my shoes off inside and aligned the mat with the threshold. I was precise about it. It was one of those small control things I did without thinking. The mat was angled to the left, about 2 inches off center. I knelt down. I pushed the mat aside. Beneath it, on the clean wood of the porch, was a faint, brownish smear. I touched it. It was gritty, fresh soil. It was not dry dirt from a week ago. It was damp, rich soil, the kind of soil you would find in a garden bed or around a bulkhead. I stood up and slammed the door, locking the deadbolt and the handle. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I jumped, a gasp escaping my throat. I grabbed it. A text from Evan. "Hey, Miss Bryant, I am home. I feel bad leaving you there." I typed back, "I am fine." Evan. "Police said it was pipes." 3 dots appeared. He was typing. Then they vanished. Then appeared again. I remembered something else. The text read, "I did not want to say it in front of the cop because I was not sure." "What?" I typed. Before I started mowing, I saw a van parked down the street. White Ford. Pretty new. It had a logo on the side. Northline Restoration. I stared at the name. Northline Restoration. I did not know it. "Why does that matter?" I asked. "Because no one got out," Evan replied. "It was just sitting there. And when I pulled my truck up to your curb, they started the engine and drove off. But they did not go to a job. They just circled the block. I saw them again when I was leaving. They were parked on the next street over, facing your backyard." I felt a cold prickle at the base of my neck. "Thank you." "Evan," I typed, "get some sleep." I put the phone down. I was not going to sleep. I was done being the victim in the horror movie who waits for the monster to come up the stairs. I was Hazel Bryant. I paid the mortgage on this house. I fixed the garbage disposal when it jammed. I killed the spiders. I went to the junk drawer in the kitchen. I dug through the tangle of rubber bands and batteries until I found what I was looking for. A cheap, battery-operated door chime I had bought for the back door years ago and never installed. It was a simple magnetic sensor. When the contact broke, it chimed. I grabbed a tube of superglue and the flashlight. I marched to the basement door. I moved the chair. I unlocked it. I did not go down. I refused to go down there again tonight. Instead, I opened the door just enough to reach the frame. I cleaned a spot on the molding with spit and my sleeve. I stuck the main unit of the chime to the door frame and the magnetic strip to the door itself. I tested it. I opened the door an inch. Ding dong. It was loud, obnoxious, perfect. I closed the door and locked it. If that door opened, even a fraction, the whole house would know. I went back to the kitchen table. I needed to do something with my hands. I needed to understand what Evan had seen. Northline Restoration. I pulled out the file box where I kept the house records. I had bought the place 4 years ago. A charmer with potential that stretched my budget to the breaking point. I started flipping through the closing documents, inspection reports, deed, title insurance, disclosures. I scanned the pages, roof age, 10 years, HV, AC, 15 years, foundation, satisfactory. I paused at a stapled packet near the back. It was a collection of invoices from the previous owner, provided as proof of maintenance. I flipped through them, gutter cleaning, chimney sweep. Then I saw it, an invoice dated 6 months before I bought the house. The letterhead was generic, just a pixelated graphic of a house. Invoice number 4002, service, Water mitigation slash subgrade stabilization. Cost $0. Warranty service. There was no company name on the top. Just a phone number that looked like a local landline, but in the notes section, typed in a jagged font, was a reference code, N-LINE-REQ-88. N-line, North line? I stared at the paper. Why was it $0? Warranty service implied previous work, but there was no record of previous work in the disclosure. The sellers, an elderly couple moving to Florida, had told me the basement was dry as a bone. Never a drop, the husband had said, shaking my hand with a grip that felt like dry parchment. I looked at the invoice again. Subgrade stabilization. That sounded serious. That sounded like structural work. Why hadn't the inspector flagged it? I sat back, rubbing my temples. The house was settling around me, groaning in the cooling air. The refrigerator cycled off, plunging the kitchen into a deeper silence. It was 1 a.m. I should go to bed. I had to work tomorrow. I had to be a functioning human being. I stood up and walked to the stairs leading to the second floor. I paused at the bottom, looking down the hallway toward the kitchen. The basement door was a white rectangle in the shadows. Ding! My heart stopped. I waited for the dong. It didn't come. The chime hadn't triggered. It was my mind. It was just my mind. I climbed the stairs, my legs feeling like lead. I went into my bedroom and shut the door. I did not lock it. I needed to hear if the chime went off downstairs. I lay down on the bed, fully clothed, pulling the quilt up to my chin. I stared at the ceiling fan, tracing the shape of the blades in the dim light from the street lamp outside. Sleep, I told myself. Just sleep. And then I heard it. It was not coming from the basement this time. Or maybe it was. And the vents were carrying it, magnifying it, distorting it. It drifted up through the floorboards. 3 short, sharp bursts of sound. Not crying. Not exactly. It sounded like a vocalization of effort. Like someone trying to speak through a gag. Or someone trying to scream without air. I sat bolt upright, the quilt falling away. The sound stopped. Then, silence. But this silence was different. It wasn't empty. It felt heavy, expectant. It felt like the silence after a question has been asked, and the speaker is waiting for an answer. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, my fingers trembling. I stared at the screen, the blue light harsh in the darkness. I wanted to text Evan. I wanted to call the police again, but I didn't. Because the chime hadn't rung. The basement door hadn't opened. The bulkhead doors were bolted. The windows were locked. If there was someone in my house, they hadn't broken in. They were already there, and as I sat there in the dark, clutching my phone like a talisman, the terrifying thought finally took root. Cold and unshakable, the crying wasn't a distress signal. It was a lure. The morning light did not bring clarity. It only brought a headache that throbbed behind my eyes with the rhythmic persistence of a drum. I sat at my kitchen table, the coffee in my mug long since gone cold, staring at the phone. The house was silent. The door chime I had installed on the basement frame sat mute, a little plastic sentinel that had failed to warn me of anything because nothing had opened. But I knew what I had heard. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Marla Winslow. Marla was the real estate agent who had sold me this house 4 years ago. She was a woman of aggressive beige pantsuits and a smile that seemed permanently affixed with hairspray. I remembered her as being exhaustively thorough, the kind of person who pointed out every scratch on a hardwood floor just so you could not claim she hid it later. I hit the call button. It rang 4 times before she picked up. Hazel? Her voice sounded breathless, as if I had interrupted her in the middle of a sprint. Hazel Bryant? My goodness, I have not heard that name in a while. Is everything okay? You are not looking to sell already, are you? Market is shifting. You know. No, Marla, I am not selling, I said, keeping my voice steady. I have a question about the house, about the history of the house. There was a pause on the line, a beat of silence that felt heavier than it should have. History? Marla asked. The cheerfulness in her voice had thinned, revealing a brittle edge underneath. We went over the disclosures. Hazel, you signed the full packet 4 years ago. That is a long time to have questions. I know. I said, I found an old invoice in the closing documents last night. It was for water mitigation. There was a reference code for a company called Northline Restoration. Does that ring a bell? The silence on the other end stretched out. I could hear the background noise of her office, phones ringing, the murmur of other agents. But Marla herself was quiet. Marla? I asked. I am here, she said. Her voice had dropped an octave. Listen to me. Hazel, why are you digging into this now? Did something break? Because if it is a failure of the repair, that is not on me. That is between you and the contractor. Nothing broke. I said, I'm just hearing things. Noises in the basement. I want to know what work was actually done. Hazel, listen to me, she said. And this time, the rush was gone, replaced by a low, urgent warning. You have a good house. You have a solid equity position. Do not go looking for trouble where there is none. Northline. They are difficult. They have a lot of lawyers and a lot of contracts that are very specific about liability. Do not start a fight with contractors unless you know exactly what ground you are standing on. I am not trying to start a fight, I said. Surprised by her intensity, I just want to know. You signed the papers, she cut in. You signed the supplemental disclosure. It is all there. I have to go. Hazel, I have a client walking in. The line went dead. I stared at the phone. Marla Winslow had never been the type to hang up on a client. She was the type to talk you into submission. Her abruptness felt less like rudeness and more like an escape. Supplemental disclosure. I had heard the words, but they had not registered. I looked at the file box still sitting on the kitchen table. I had gone through the invoices, the inspection report, the deed. But I had not scrutinized every single page of the legal bloat that happens at a closing table. The stack of papers 2 inches thick that you sign with a cramping hand while dreaming of the keys. I opened the box again. I pulled out the heavy manila folder labeled Closing Docs. Final. I began to turn the pages, one by one. Settlement statement. Truth in lending. Mortgage note. Title abstract. I found it near the back, sandwiched between a lead paint notification and a radon waiver. A single sheet of paper, slightly different in texture than the others, as if it had been faxed and then photocopied. Supplemental disclosure of property condition. I scanned the text. It was dense legalese, the kind designed to make your eyes glaze over, but I forced myself to read every word. Buyer acknowledges existence of prior foundation stabilization claim number 77B. Seller affirms that contractor lien regarding said stabilization has been resolved and satisfied as of. And then, at the bottom, a permit number. Permit reference M-RRES-9902. I frowned. I had lived in Maple Hollow for 4 years. I had applied for a permit once to build a small garden shed that I never ended up building. I remembered the format because the clerk had made a big deal about it. Maple Hollow permits always started with the year, followed by the letters MH. It should have been something like 2020-MH-XXXX M-RR. ES-9902 did not look like a town permit. It looked like an internal filing code. I grabbed my purse. I needed to get out of the house anyway. The silence was starting to feel like pressure building in my ears. The Maple Hollow Municipal Building was a squat brick structure that smelled of floor wax and old coffee. It was the kind of place where enthusiasm went to die. I walked into the building and zoning department, holding the piece of paper with the permit number written on it. There was one clerk at the window, a woman with reading glasses on a chain and an expression that suggested my presence was a personal insult. "Can I help you?" she asked, not looking up from her computer. "Hi. Yes," I said. "I would like to pull a permit file for my property. I have the reference number." I slid the paper across the counter. She sighed, picked it up, and typed the number into her keyboard with slow, deliberate strokes. Her eyes scanned the screen. She stopped, She typed it again. She frowned. "This is not coming up," she said. "It has to be there." I said, "It was on my closing disclosure." She turned the monitor slightly so I could see the reflection of her glare. "It is not in the system. The format is wrong. We do not use M-RES codes. That looks like a commercial filing. Maybe? Or a county code? Can you check the physical address?" I asked. 1142 Oakwood Drive. She sighed again, heavier this time, and typed in my address. She scrolled through a list. "I see the roof permit from the previous owner," she said. "I see a furnace replacement. I see—" "Oh, what?" I asked. I leaned forward, gripping the edge of the counter. "There is a marker here," she said. Her voice had lost its boredom. It was now confused. It says, "Restricted access. Misfiling." "I cannot open the details. It is grayed out. What does that mean?" "It means I cannot open it," she said. "I need to see that file." I said, my voice was rising. "I am the homeowner. If there is a permit on my house that is restricted, I have a right to know why." "Excuse me." A door behind the clerk opened, and a man stepped out. He was wearing a tie that was too short and a shirt that was too tight. He had the air of someone who enjoyed enforcing rules that made no sense. He looked at the clerk, then at me. "Is there a problem?" he asked. "She is asking for a restricted file." The clerk said, "The Oakwood Drive property." The man's eyes flicked to me. They were cold, assessing. He did not smile. "Ms. Bryant?" he asked. He knew my name. I had not given the clerk my name, only the address. "Yes," I said. "The file you are looking for is currently under administrative review due to a clerical error in the archiving system." He said smoothly, "It is not available for public inspection at this moment. I am not the public." I said, "I own the house. It is a liability issue regarding the record keeping." He said, "We cannot release a file that might contain erroneous data until it has been rectified. How long will that take?" He shrugged. "It is a backlog issue. If you want to formally request the documents, you will need to submit a written petition through the Civic Records Review Board. They meet once a month." "This is ridiculous." I said, "I just want to know who did the foundation work on my house. Submit the request." "Ms. Bryant," he said, "it is the only way." He turned and walked back into his office, closing the door with a firm click. The clerk looked at me, gave a small, helpless shrug, and went back to her typing. I walked out of the building, my hands shaking. It was not just bureaucracy. I knew bureaucracy. I worked in dental supply logistics. Bureaucracy was slow and incompetent. This was different. This was a wall that had been built specifically to keep people like me from seeing what was on the other side. That night, the house felt larger. The shadows seemed to stretch out from the corners, reaching for the center of the rooms. I had checked the basement 3 times. I had checked the windows. I had checked the chime. Everything was secure, but I could not shake the feeling that the house itself was holding its breath. I was sitting in the living room, trying to read a book, when my phone rang. I jumped, dropping the book. It landed with a thud that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. I looked at the screen. No caller ID. I usually did not answer blocked numbers. But tonight, my nerves were frayed wires, sparking at the slightest touch. I picked it up. "Hello?" There was no static, no background noise, just a voice. It was a male voice, calm, resonant, and completely devoid of emotion. "You are hearing what you are not supposed to hear." The voice said, "Who is this?" I demanded. I stood up, moving toward the window, peering out through the blinds at the empty street. "Stop asking questions." "Hazel," the voice said. It was not a threat. It sounded like an observation, like someone telling me that rain was wet. "You are looking at things that do not concern you. The house is fine. The noise is nothing. Go back to your life." "Is this Evan?" I asked. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" "Evan is a nice kid," the voice said. "You should let him mow your lawn. But you should stop going to the town hall. And you should stop reading old files." "How do you know I went to the town hall?" The line clicked, then the hum of the dial tone. I lowered the phone slowly. I felt cold all over. They knew. Someone knew exactly where I had been and what I had asked. The supervisor? The clerk? Or someone watching me? I dialed the police. I dialed the non-emergency line again. I told the dispatcher about the call. "Did he threaten you?" she asked. "Did he say he was going to hurt you?" "No." I said, "He told me to stop asking questions. Ma'am, unless there is a direct threat of violence, there is not much we can do about a prank call. Block the number." "It was not a prank." I said, "I sent a patrol car out yesterday," she said, her voice thinning with patience. Everything was secure. I hung up. I was on my own. The next morning, I saw Tessa Rowan in her garden. Tessa lived in the house to the left of mine. She was a woman in her 50s who baked aggressive amounts of zucchini bread and knew the gossip of the neighborhood before it even happened. I walked over to the fence. "Tessa," I said. She looked up, wiping dirt from her gloves. "Oh, hi. Hazel. How is Maya? Having fun in D.C.?" "She is fine," I said. "Listen, Tessa, have you noticed anything weird lately? Around my house? Or on the street?" "Weird?" She paused, tilting her head. "What do you mean?" "Like vans parked that do not belong here. Or noises. I have been hearing noises from my basement." Tessa's expression shifted. It was a subtle tightening of the eyes. She stood up and walked closer to the fence, lowering her voice. "Old houses settle. Hazel, mine groans like a dying whale when the wind blows." "It is not settling," I said. "It sounds like crying. And I got a call last night. A strange call." Tessa sighed. She looked around the neighborhood, scanning the street. "Hazel, honey, listen to me. You are stressed. You are a single mom. You are working hard. Maya is away. It gets to you." "It is not stress," I said, frustrated. "Look," she said, leaning in. "We live in a nice, quiet neighborhood. That is why we pay the taxes we pay. We do not have drama here. We do not have police cars coming by. It upsets the values. It upsets people. Are you telling me to ignore it? I am telling you to let it go," she said. Her voice was firm. "Just focus on your daughter coming home. You do not want to be the neighbor who is always seeing things. People talk, and you do not want to attract the wrong kind of attention." "What kind of attention?" She did not answer. She just gave me a tight, pitying smile. "Just relax. Hazel, have some tea. It will pass." She turned back to her hydrangeas, dismissing me. I stood there for a moment, feeling a sudden, sharp distance between us. Tessa was not just being dismissive, she was being careful. She was afraid of something, and she wanted me to be quiet so I did not bring it to her doorstep. I was working from home that afternoon, my laptop set up on the kitchen table. When I heard the rumble of Evan's truck, I watched him pull up. He got out, looking hesitant. He did not put his headphones on immediately. He walked up the driveway. Scanning the windows of my house, I went out to meet him. "Hey, Evan," I said. He jumped slightly. "Oh, hey, Miss Bryant. I came to finish the back. I did not finish yesterday." "It is okay," I said. "Thank you for coming back." He looked at his boots. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Did you hear it again?" "Yes," I said quietly. "I did." He nodded, looking relieved that he was not crazy. "I heard it too," he said, "just now, when I walked around the back to check the gate. But Miss Bryant, it was weird." "What do you mean?" "I was standing right by the bulkhead," he said, "and I heard the crying, but it sounded muffled. Not like it was deep in the ground. It sounded like it was traveling. Like when you talk through a tube?" "Show me," I said. We walked around to the backyard. The air was still and hot. The bulkhead door sat there, innocent and rusted. "Where were you standing?" I asked. "Right here," he said, pointing to a spot near the fence line, about 10 feet from the house. I stood there. I listened. At first, nothing. Then, a faint sound. It was the crying. But Evan was right. It sounded directional. It wasn't coming from the basement doors. It was coming from the ground near the fence. I looked down. There was a narrow depression in the grass. Running from the back of my lot towards the house, a drainage swale. It was overgrown with clover, but the depression was clear. "It sounds like it is coming from the pipe," Evan said. "What pipe?" "The drainage pipe," he said. "Usually, these houses have a perimeter drain. It takes the water away from the foundation and dumps it somewhere." I followed the line of the depression. It ran from the bulkhead area, under the fence, and out toward the vacant lot behind my property. I walked back toward the bulkhead. I knelt down in the dirt, right where the concrete of the foundation met the soil. The ivy was thick there. I pulled it back. There was something metal underneath. I ripped more ivy away. It was an access panel, a square steel plate, about 10 inches wide, set into the ground. It was painted green to blend in with the grass, but the paint was fresh. I ran my finger over the screws that held it in place. They were bright, shiny silver. No rust, no dirt in the grooves. "These are new," I whispered. Evan knelt beside me. "That is not original." He said, "That looks like a clean-out. But why is it here? The clean-out is usually inside the basement." I stared at the panel. Someone had installed this. "Recently." "Evan, do you have a screwdriver in your truck?" "Yeah, get it." He ran to the truck and came back with a Phillips head. I took it from him. I fit the tip into the first screw. It turned easily, too easily. It had been greased. I removed the 4 screws and lifted the plate. A smell wafted up. Damp, earthy, and faintly chemical, like chlorine and rot. I shone my phone's flashlight into the hole. It was a pipe. All right, a wide, black corrugated pipe running parallel to the foundation. But there was something else. A smaller, smooth PVC pipe ran inside the larger one, disappearing into the darkness toward the house. And from that pipe, the sound echoed up. It was clearer now. It wasn't just crying. It was a loop. It was identical. The intake of breath. The sob. The pause. "It is coming from the pipe," Evan whispered, his eyes wide. "It is traveling through it. It is not inside the house." I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. It is being piped into the house, or under it. I dropped the plate back down and screwed it shut, my hands shaking. "Evan," I said, "do not tell anyone about this. Not your mom, not your friends." "I won't," he said. "But Miss Bryant, who would do that?" "I do not know." I said, "But I am going to find out." I went back inside and locked the door. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely type. I searched for home inspectors, but skipped the local ones. I didn't trust anyone in Maple Hollow right now. I found a company 3 towns over called Pine Ridge Home Assessors. They had good reviews and a website that said, "Unbiased reporting." I called them. "I need an emergency consult." I told the receptionist, "I think I have an unauthorized drainage modification." I got an inspector named Mr. Henderson on the line. He sounded older, gruff but knowledgeable. "Describe it to me," he said. I told him about the panel, the new screws, the pipe within a pipe. He was silent for a moment. "You said the screws were greased?" "Yes." "And the inner pipe? Smooth PVC?" "Yes." "Miss Bryant," he said, his voice dropping to a serious, professional tone. "I have seen this before, but usually not in residential suburbs. That sounds like a bypass system." "What is a bypass system?" "It is a way to route water, or other things, around a foundation without it going through the municipal meter or the inspection points. Sometimes restoration crews install them to hide the fact that a foundation is failing. They pump the water out secretly so the basement looks dry during a sale. But the pipe-in-pipe? That is specific. That is for sound baffling or air exchange." "Air exchange?" "If there is a void under the slab, or a sealed chamber. They need to vent it. If they don't, the pressure builds up." "And the sound?" I asked. "The crying sound?" "Wind," he said, "or hydraulic pressure. If air is being forced through a corrugated pipe at a certain velocity, it can moan. It can sound like, well, like a person." I felt a wave of nausea. It is not a ghost. I thought, it is plumbing. It is a lie constructed of plastic and airflow. "Can you come out?" I asked. Tomorrow morning, he said. 9 o'clock. Do not touch that panel again. If it is an illegal bypass, you could be liable for groundwater contamination if you tamper with it. I hung up the phone and sat in the gathering dark. The fear that had been gripping me for 2 days began to change. It cooled. It hardened. When I thought there was an intruder in my basement, I was terrified for my safety. When I thought it was a ghost, I was terrified for my sanity. But this was different. Someone had come onto my property. Someone had dug a trench. Someone had installed a system designed to deceive me, or the town, or the bank, and the crying, the sound that had kept me awake, that had made me doubt my own mind. It was a side effect, or worse, it was a feature. I remembered the voice on the phone. You are hearing what you are not supposed to hear. They knew the sound was there. They knew it frightened people, and they used it. I looked around my living room, the photos of Maya on the mantel, the throw pillows I had spent too much money on. This was my home, my sanctuary, and someone was using it. They were using my fear to keep me quiet. They were using my neighbors' apathy to keep me isolated. They were using the town's bureaucracy to keep me blind. I felt a spark of anger ignite in my chest. It was small, but it was hot. I grabbed my laptop. I opened a new document. I named it log_01. Date, October 14th. Event, discovered concealed access panel near bulkhead. Witness, Evan Pike. Details, new hardware, double piping system, suspected bypass. I typed out everything. The call to Marla, the visit to the town hall, the blocked call. I took screenshots of the call log on my phone. I took a picture of the invoice with the North Line code. I uploaded them to a cloud drive and shared the password with my sister in Ohio, sending her a text. If anything happens to me, look at the folder marked House. Then I went to Amazon. I ordered a small, high-fidelity digital voice recorder. Next day delivery. My phone pinged. A text from Maya. Hey Mom, we saw the Lincoln Memorial today. It was huge. Miss you. I stared at the picture she sent. Her smiling face, flushed with cold, standing in front of the massive white statue. She looked so happy, so safe. I typed back, looks amazing. Baby, love you so much. Have fun. I did not tell her about the crying. I did not tell her about the man on the phone. I would not let this poison touch her. I was the wall now. I walked to the kitchen window and looked out at the backyard. It was pitch black, but I knew the panel was there, hiding in the grass. I'm not going anywhere. I whispered to the glass, and from the basement, faint but persistent, the house began to cry again. But this time, I did not cover my ears. I listened. I studied the rhythm. 3 seconds on, 2 seconds off. It wasn't a sob. It was a pulse. Mister? Henderson arrived at exactly 9 o'clock in a truck that looked like it had survived a war, which I immediately found reassuring. He was a man made of right angles, square jaw, square shoulders, and a clipboard he held like a shield. He did not smile when I opened the door, just nodded and wiped his boots on the mat with a thoroughness that bordered on ritualistic. Show me, he said. I led him around the side of the house to the backyard. The morning air was crisp, the kind of deceptively bright October day that masks the coming rot of winter. The grass was still wet with dew. I pointed to the access panel Evan and I had uncovered near the bulkhead. I have not touched it since yesterday, I said. Henderson knelt down. His knees popped loudly, a dry cracking sound. He put on a pair of thick nitrile gloves and pulled a small flashlight from his belt. He did not unscrew the panel immediately. Instead, he leaned in close, his nose inches from the metal plate. He sniffed. Then he ran a gloved finger along the seam where the metal met the earth. You smell that? He asked. I knelt beside him. I sniffed. At first, I smelled only damp earth and dead leaves. But then, underneath it, a sharp, stinging scent hit the back of my throat. It was chemical, acrid, like the smell of a newly renovated bathroom. Sealant. I said, polyurethane-based. Henderson corrected. High grade, industrial. This is not hardware store caulk. This was applied hot. He tapped the soil around the hinges of the bulkhead doors. Look at the dirt here. See how it is lighter? Fluffier? Yes, this soil was turned recently, he said, within the last 48 hours. And look at the gasket on this access panel. He pointed to the thin strip of black rubber visible just under the lip of the metal plate. It is clean, he said. No oxidation, no grit. This gasket was replaced yesterday, maybe the day before. Someone opened this up, did maintenance, and sealed it back tight. My stomach did a slow, sickening roll. So someone was here, I said. Henderson stood up, peeling off his gloves. Ms. Bryant, I'm going to give you some advice, and I'm not going to charge you for it because I do not want my name on an official report for this just yet. What do you mean? If I write a report saying you have an illegal drainage bypass, you are legally obligated to disclose it to your insurance and the town. Your premiums will skyrocket, or they will cancel your policy. The town could fine you $500 a day until it is removed. I stared at him, but I did not put it there. It is on your land, he said simply. That makes it your problem. He looked at the panel again, his expression grim. Do not touch it, he said. Do not unscrew it. Do not pour anything down it. Photograph it. Document the date and time. Keep a log. But do not physically interfere with it. If this system is doing what I think it is doing, venting pressure from a larger unpermitted line, blocking it could cause a backup. And if sewer water or runoff backs up into your basement because you tampered with it, you are liable for the damages to your neighbors too. He handed me his card. Document everything, he said, and get a lawyer, not a real estate closer, a litigator. He walked back to his truck, leaving me standing in the wet grass, staring at the green metal plate that suddenly looked less like a piece of plumbing and more like a landmine. I went inside and sat at the kitchen table, forcing myself to breathe. The house felt different now. It wasn't just haunted by noises. It was infected. I opened my laptop to log Henderson's visit. My inbox pinged. A new email had arrived at 10:15. The subject line was innocuous. Neighborhood Drainage Compliance Review. The sender was admin at ketterlow.com. I clicked it open. The logo was a generic blue roofline ... clean and corporate ... Dear resident, Ketter Low Property Solutions has been contracted to review regional drainage compliance in the Maple Hollow area. Our records indicate your property at 1142 Oakwood Drive may require an updated exterior assessment to ensure conformity with recent municipal water directives. We would like to schedule a brief walkthrough of your exterior perimeter within the next 48 hours. Please click the link below to confirm availability. Sincerely, the assessment team. I read it twice. It was polite. It used all the boring, soft words that make you want to fall asleep and just say yes. Compliance, conformity, assessment. But I had never heard of Ketter Low, and I knew for a fact that the town used the Department of Public Works for water issues. I picked up my phone and dialed the number listed in the email signature. Thank you for calling Ketter & Low. A robotic female voice answered. For scheduling, press 1. I pressed 1. Music played. It was a loop of upbeat jazz that sounded tinny and distorted. I waited for 2 minutes. Ketter & Low, a woman's voice said abruptly. Hello? I said. My name is Hazel Bryant. I just received an email about a drainage assessment. One moment. Please. The line clicked. The jazz returned. I waited another 3 minutes. My grip on the phone tightened. Ketter & Low, a man's voice answered this time. Who am I speaking with? Hazel Bryant. I repeated. I want to know who hired you. Is this a town contract? Please hold, he said. Click, jazz. I looked at the timer on my phone screen. 6 minutes, 7 minutes. Then, the line went dead. No goodbye, no explanation. Just the sudden disconnect. I stared at the screen, a flash of irritation burning through my anxiety. I was about to redial when a text message banner slid down from the top of my screen. Sender. KL Dispatch. We have you confirmed for a perimeter check tomorrow between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m. No homeowner presence required. I froze. I hadn't confirmed anything. I hadn't even spoken to a human for more than 10 seconds. No homeowner presence required. They weren't asking. They were telling me they were coming, and by sending the text, they were creating a digital paper trail that made it look like I had agreed. I typed back furiously, "I did not agree to this. Do not come to my property." I hit send. Message, send failure. This number does not accept replies. I slammed the phone down on the table. It spun in a circle, blurring. They were coming. They wanted to see if I had found the panel, or maybe they wanted to see if I had tampered with it. Evan came by later that afternoon to pick up his weed whacker. He looked tired, his usual teenage slouch more pronounced. He stood on the porch, shifting his weight from foot to foot. I did not find anything else. "Miss Bryant," he said, "I walked the fence line again. Nothing. I found out something, though." I said, I told him about the email, about Ketter Lowe. Evan frowned. "Ketter and Lowe? You have heard of them?" "No," he said, "but it sounds like the way they name them." "Who?" "The restoration guys." He said, "Look, I worked for a guy last summer, just hauling drywall, mostly, but he did work for these big management companies. He told me how they do it. They have these shell companies. They create a name, get a generic logo, wrap a van. They do the work, sometimes sketchy work, and then if people complain or sue, the company just dissolves. Poof, gone. And then they start a new one the next week." Evan said, "Same guys, same vans, different stickers?" "Ketter and Lowe sounds exactly like the kind of fake name they would use. Boring, trustworthy." He looked out at the street. "That van I saw yesterday? The Northline one? I bet if you looked up Northline today, they would not exist, or the phone number would be dead." I thought about the invoice in my closing documents. The number that looked like a landline. "So Northline is gone," I said. "And now it is Ketter and Lowe, and tomorrow it might be something else." Evan said, "It is a shell game. Miss Bryant, they move the piece so fast you never know where it is. But the guy holding the table is always the same." "Who is the guy holding the table?" I asked. "I do not know," he said, "but whoever it is, they have a lot of vans." He hesitated, looking at me with genuine concern. "If they come tomorrow," he said, "do you want me to be here? I can pretend to be mowing, just so you are not alone." I looked at this kid, this skinny 18-year-old with grease under his fingernails, and felt a surge of gratitude so strong it almost made me cry. "No, Evan," I said, "you have school, and I do not want you involved in this. If these people are dangerous enough to fake a company, I do not want them knowing your name. I will be okay," he said, "but be careful." He walked down the driveway, throwing his gear into his truck. I watched him go, feeling the isolation close back in around the house like water filling a footprint. The mail arrived at 4. There was a thick white envelope from the Maple Hollow Municipal Center. I ripped it open right there at the mailbox. It was a form letter. The paper was cheap. The printing slightly crooked. Record request number, REQ-0045. Subject, 1142. Oakwood Drive. Permit file access. Dear property owner, your verbal request for access to historical permit data regarding the above-referenced property has been denied. Reason for denial: administrative seal/pending litigation archive. Under Municipal Code 44.2, records involved in active or suspended legal disputes are not subject to standard public disclosure. To appeal this decision, you must file Form 12B with the county clerk. I scanned down to the bottom. There was a case reference number. Case ref. PHANTOM7. I stared at it. The rest of the letter was printed in Standard Times New Roman. But the case reference number was different. The font was Courier. The spacing was uneven. The O was slightly raised above the other letters. It looked like someone had put the paper into a typewriter and manually hammered those characters onto the page. PHANTOM, phantom. It felt like a taunt, a bureaucratic middle finger. It was ridiculous, almost theatrical, but that was the point, wasn't it? It was a signal that the person processing this request wasn't bound by the rules. They could type whatever they wanted. I took the letter inside and added it to my file. I took a picture of the phantom code and uploaded it to the cloud. I needed help. I needed someone who spoke the language of forms and denials and threats. Renee Calder's office was not in a glass tower. It was in a converted Victorian house on the edge of town, with a sign out front that said, Calder Law, Real Estate, Civil Litigation. Renee herself was a woman who vibrated with intense, contained energy. She had short gray hair and glasses that hung around her neck on a colorful beaded chain. She listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she sat back and tapped her pen against the desk. You have a problem. Hazel, she said. Her voice was calm, devoid of the gaslighting I had received from everyone else. But it is not the problem you think you have. What do you mean? You think you have a noise problem, or a trespass problem, she said. You don't. You have a leverage problem. She leaned forward. Here is how the scam works, she said. I have seen variations of this in 3 other counties. A developer or a holding company wants to acquire properties in a specific area, maybe for a new complex, maybe just to flip, but they cannot buy everyone out at market value. It is too expensive. So what do? I asked. They create distress, she said. They target homes with single owners, widows, divorcees, elderly folks, people they assume are overwhelmed or underfinanced. They find a contractor, a shell company, like your Northline, to do some work, maybe a foundation repair, maybe drainage, and in the process of that work, they install hooks. Hooks? Modifications, she said, like the bypass your inspector found. Things that are technically illegal, things that transfer liability to the homeowner, they bury them. And then, a few years later, another company, like Ketter and Lowe, shows up to inspect. They find the illegal work. They threaten fines. They threaten lawsuits. I felt the blood drain from my face. And then what? I whispered. And then, miraculously, a buyer appears. Renee said, a cash buyer. Someone willing to take the problem property off your hands for a fraction of what it is worth. They promise to handle the legal mess. You sell. Just to get out from under the fear. And they win. They get the house for 60 cents on the dollar. I sat there, stunned. It wasn't just harassment. It was a slow-motion robbery. But the crying, I said, the noise. Why the noise? Psychological pressure. Renee said, it is the accelerant. If you are just dealing with a permit issue, you might fight it. You might hire a lawyer. But if you cannot sleep, if you are terrified in your own home, you break faster. Fear makes you irrational. It makes you want to escape. She looked at me with sympathy. They are banking on you breaking. Hazel, they are banking on you being a scared single mother who just wants to protect her daughter. I thought of Maya. I thought of the way I had checked the locks 3 times before leaving the house. They are right, I said quietly. I am scared. That is okay, Renee said. Being scared is a survival instinct, but acting scared is a choice. She tore the sheet off her legal pad. We are going to fight back, but we have to be smart. We cannot fight the noise. We fight the paper. She wrote down a list of actions. 1. We file a formal notice against trespass to Ketter and Lowe. 2. We file a demand for the permit file under the Freedom of Information Act, bypassing the local clerk. 3. We get a third-party inspection of that easement. It is going to cost money, she said gently. I do not have much. I said, we will work it out, she said, because if we let them do this to you, they will do it to the next house, and the next. I left her office feeling lighter, but also heavier. The ghost was gone, replaced by a monster made of greed and contracts, and unlike a ghost, this monster could be sued. But that night, the bravado faded. The house was dark. I had turned off the main lights to avoid silhouetting myself against the windows. I sat in the living room, the glow of the street lamp casting long, distorted shapes across the floor. I looked at the picture of Maya on the wall. She was 5 in the photo, missing a front tooth, holding a pumpkin. What was I doing? I was picking a fight with a faceless entity that had the power to forge documents and invade my home. I was risking my financial stability, my safety, and my daughter's peace of mind. Renee said they targeted single mothers because they assumed we were weak, but maybe we were just logical. If I sold the house tomorrow, I could move. I could take Maya somewhere safe, somewhere without crying in the walls. Was it bravery to stay? Or was it stubbornness? If something happened to Maya because I was too proud to be pushed out, I would never forgive myself. I hated the thought. I hated that they had forced me to think it. That was the violation. They had entered my head. They were making me weigh my daughter's safety against my own dignity. My phone buzzed. A motion alert from the doorbell camera. I pulled up the app. The video feed was grainy in the low light. The camera faced the front porch and part of the driveway. At the very edge of the frame, near the hydrangeas, a figure stood. It was a man. He was wearing a nondescript gray jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. He wasn't walking toward the door. He wasn't trying to hide. He was just standing there. He was facing the house. His hands were in his pockets. He was perfectly still, like a statue placed in the yard. I watched. My breath caught in my throat. He stood there for a full minute. He didn't look at the camera. He looked at the window. He looked at the window where I was sitting. Could he see me? I had the lights off. But could he feel me watching him? Then, slowly, he turned his head. He looked directly at the doorbell camera. The infrared light reflected in his eyes, turning them into glowing white orbs. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just nodded, once, a small, acknowledging nod. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness of the street. I sat there, frozen. He knew. He knew I was watching. He knew I had the camera. The nod was a message. I see you seeing me. I didn't call the police. What would I say? A man stood on my lawn and nodded. I saved the clip. I backed it up to the cloud. Sleep was impossible. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening. And then, at 2 a.m, it started. The crying. It was louder tonight. It sounded desperate, strained. I grabbed the new digital recorder I had bought. I turned it on. I crept out into the hallway, moving toward the stairs. The sound was vibrating through the floorboards. It felt like the house itself was weeping. I went down the stairs. The air in the kitchen was cold. I went to the basement door. I did not open it. I pressed the recorder against the wood. Sob. Gasp. I watched the audio levels on the small screen spike with each sound. I stood there for 10 minutes, recording the loop. Then, the sound changed. The crying didn't stop, but the pitch shifted. It became gargled, warbled, like someone trying to scream underwater. And underneath it, underneath the human-like sound, I heard something else. I pulled the recorder away and held it closer to my ear. I couldn't hear it with my naked ear. The crying was too loud. I plugged my headphones into the recorder and hit playback. I isolated the last 30 seconds. I turned the volume up to maximum. I closed my eyes and listened. Cry, cry. And there, in the background, a low, rhythmic sound. Clank, clank, clank. It was mechanical, metal on metal. Then, a rush. It sounded like water moving under high pressure, like a toilet flushing, but massive. And then, the crying spiked in volume. Ah! I rewound it, played it again. Clank, swish, cry. The crying wasn't a recording playing on a speaker. It was created. It was the sound of air and water being forced through a constriction. The mechanical rattle was a valve opening. The swish was the fluid rushing through. And the cry? The cry was the air escaping through a specifically shaped aperture. My house was a flute. Someone was playing my house like an instrument. I took the headphones off. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from clarity. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't an intruder hiding in the dark. It was a machine, and if it was a machine, it had a power source. It had controls. It had a purpose. I looked at the basement door. I knew now. The sound wasn't just harassment, it was camouflage. The crying was loud to hide the sound of the pump. They weren't just scaring me, they were moving something. They were using my drainage line, my easement, my property, to move something liquid and heavy through the neighborhood in the dead of night. I wasn't a victim of a haunting, I was a mule. I went back upstairs and packed a bag for Maya, just in case. Then I sat by the window and waited for the sun to come up. The crying continued below me, a mournful, synthetic song. But now, when I heard it, I didn't hear a woman in pain. I heard a system working, and I was going to break it. The paper looked innocent enough. It was standard bond weight, cream-colored, with a letterhead that simply read, Calder Law. But as I signed my name at the bottom of the page, the pen scratching loud in the quiet office, I felt like I was loading a weapon. "This is the trespass warning," Renee Calder said, sliding the document into a folder. "We are sending it via certified mail to the registered address for Keter and Low Property Solutions. It states clearly that any agent, employee, or subcontractor of their firm found on your property will be considered a trespasser and subject to immediate police action." She picked up a second document, and this, she said, is the Article 78 proceeding. It is a formal demand to the municipality to unseal the records regarding your property, specifically the permit file referenced as Phantom 7. We are copying the State Attorney General's office on this one. That usually wakes up the local clerks. I looked at the stack of envelopes on her desk. They were thick, official, and threatening. "Do you think they will care?" I asked. "A company that uses fake names and burner phones?" "They might not care about the law," Renee said, capping her pen, "but they care about friction. Scams like this rely on lubrication. They rely on things sliding through unnoticed. When you start throwing sand in the gears, legal notices, certified mail, third-party inspections, it slows them down. It costs them money. And criminals hate losing margin more than they hate getting caught." I nodded. I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. I was not just hiding in my house anymore. I was firing back. "We also filed the request for the easement inspection," Renee added. "I have a contact at the county engineering office. I am trying to get someone out there who is not, let us say, locally entangled." "Thank you, Renee," I said. She looked at me over the rim of her glasses. Her expression was serious. "Hazel, be careful. When you corner a rat, it does not surrender. It bites. We are lighting a flare in a dark room. We are going to see what is in there. But it is going to see us too." "I know," I said. I thought of the man nodding at my camera. "I think they already see me." I drove home with the windows down, letting the cool October air rush through the car. I needed to clear my head. The tension in my neck was a constant, low-grade ache. My phone rang as I turned onto the main road leading to Maple Hollow. It was an unknown number. My heart seized. I stared at the screen. I had promised myself I would not answer unknown numbers, but Renee had said she was reaching out to the county. It could be the inspector. I hit answer. "Hello? Ms. Bryant?" The voice was male, hushed, and urgent. There was the sound of wind in the background, like someone walking briskly outside. "Yes." "Who is this?" "This is Dylan Shore," the voice said. "I am a city engineer. Renee Calder contacted my office." "Oh," I said, relief washing over me. "Thank you for calling back. We are trying to get an inspection of the drainage easement behind—" "Do not talk," he interrupted. "Just listen. I cannot be on this line long." I fell silent. The urgency in his voice was contagious. "I saw the paperwork come across the desk this morning," he said. "The request for a third-party audit of the easement on Oakwood Drive. I pulled the file before the supervisor could flag it." "And?" I asked. "You need to know you are not the first one," he said. His voice dropped lower. 2 years ago, there was a family on Cedar Street, the Millers. They complained about water noise. They complained about unauthorized digging. They filed a request just like yours." "What happened to them?" I asked, my grip on the steering wheel turning my knuckles white. "They sold," Dylan said. "Quick sale to a cash buyer." They moved to Arizona, and the week after they moved, the file on their house disappeared from the archive. Just gone. Like it never existed. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired of looking the other way, he said, and because you need to know what you're up against. Files go missing here. Ms. Bryant, when certain contractors are involved, Northline, Ketter, and Lowe, whatever they call themselves this week, the paperwork has a habit of evaporating. The building inspector who signed off on those permits? He retired 3 months ago, bought a condo in Florida, paid cash. I felt a cold chill that had nothing to do with the wind. Are you saying the town is in on it? I am saying the town is porous, he said. Money leaks in, and favors leak out. If you want to catch these guys, you cannot rely on the municipal paper trail. They own the paper. You have to catch them in the dirt. You have to find the hardware. We found a panel. I said, my inspector thinks it is a bypass. Do not tell me over the phone, he hissed. Look, I'm going to try to get assigned to your inspection request, but if I get blocked, if they send someone else, do not trust them. Do not let them into your basement alone. Dylan, I said, can you help me? The line was silent for a moment. I am trying, he said, but I have a mortgage too. Just watch your back, and watch the weather. The weather? Big storm coming in Thursday, he said. Heavy rain. If that system is what I think it is going to be working hard. That is when you will see the truth, when the pressure is up. The line clicked dead. I pulled into my driveway, my mind racing. The town is porous. The phrase stuck with me. It made me feel like the ground beneath my feet was dissolving. I got out of the car and looked toward Tessa's house. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to walk over there and say, see, I am not crazy. The city engineer just called me. There is a conspiracy. Tessa's car was in the driveway. She was out in the front yard, sweeping leaves off her walk. Tessa, I called out, waving. She looked up. She saw me. Usually, Tessa would wave back. She would walk over, leaning on her broom, and ask about work or Maya or the weather. This time, she hesitated. She looked at me, then looked quickly toward the street, as if checking to see if anyone was watching. Hey, Hazel, she called back. Her voice was tight, not unfriendly, but distant, like she was speaking to a door-to-door salesman she wanted to leave. I walked toward the property line. Tessa, I need to tell you something. I went to a lawyer today. I cannot talk right now. Hazel, she interrupted, backing away toward her porch. I have a roast in the oven. Really busy day. It will just take a second, I said. Confused by her retreat. We are just really busy, she repeated. She was not looking at me anymore. She was looking at the ground. Good luck with everything. She turned and hurried inside, closing the door firmly. I heard the deadbolt slide home. I stood there in the driveway, stung. It was so abrupt, so cold. Then I saw it, stuck into the lawn near her mailbox, gleaming white in the afternoon sun, was a small yard sign. It was brand new. The plastic was still shiny. Foundation Recovery Services, Drainage, Structural Repair. The logo was a simple geometric house shape. It was dark blue and gray. It was the exact same color palette as the Northline restoration van Evan had seen. The same font, the same sterile, corporate aesthetic. I stared at the sign. Tessa had hired them, or maybe she hadn't hired them. Maybe they had just showed up, like they did with me. Maybe she had gotten the call. You are hearing what you are not supposed to hear. But unlike me, Tessa had folded. She had taken the deal. She had let them put the sign in her yard, marking her house as territory claimed. That was why she couldn't talk to me. She was compromised. She was part of the silence now. I turned away, feeling a new level of isolation. My neighbor wasn't just ignoring me. She was a host for the parasite. I walked back to my car to get my purse. I was reaching for the door handle when I stopped. There was something on my windshield. A piece of paper, folded in half, tucked neatly under the wiper blade on the driver's side. I froze. I looked around the street. It was empty. The trees swayed in the breeze. A squirrel ran along a telephone wire. I had been gone for 2 hours. Someone had come onto my driveway, walked up to my car, and placed this here while I was at the lawyer's office. Or maybe they had followed me there and put it on while I was inside. I reached out and plucked the paper from the wiper. The paper felt thick, expensive. I unfolded it. There were 3 words, written in black ink. The handwriting was neat, precise, almost architectural. All caps. Stop digging. Hazel. I stared at the words. It wasn't a death threat. It wasn't violent imagery. It was worse. It was familiar. It used my first name. It spoke to me like a disappointing parent scolding a child. It was intimate. Stop digging. They knew what I was doing. They knew about the access panel. They knew about the lawyer. They knew about the permit request. I crushed the paper in my hand. No, I whispered. I looked directly at the camera I had mounted above the garage door. I knew it was recording. I am not stopping. I said to the empty air. I walked inside and locked the door. Panic is a cold water rising. If you struggle, you drown. If you float, you survive. I forced myself to float. I forced myself to focus on the things I could control. I called Evan. Evan. I said, I need a favor. I need you to come by at random times this week. Just park in the driveway for 10 minutes. Walk around the yard with the trimmer. Make it look like there is activity. I will pay you double. You do not have to pay me double, Miss Bryant, he said. Is everything okay? No, I said, but I am handling it. Just be unpredictable. I want them to wonder who is home. Okay, he said. I can do that. I have a free period tomorrow morning. I will swing by. Thank you. Next, I called Leah Mercer. Leah was my best friend since college. A woman who could bench press her own body weight and had 0 tolerance for nonsense. She lived 2 towns over. Leah, I said, I need you to do the pickup for Maya on Sunday. Of course, she said immediately. Why? Are you okay? You sound shaky. I have some house issues. I said, contractor drama. It is getting ugly. I do not want Maya coming straight back here if things are tense. Can she stay with you for a night? Just until I get the locks changed and everything settled? Hazel, do you need me to come over there? Leah asked. Do you need me to bring the dogs? Leah had 2 Rottweilers that were big sweethearts unless she told them not to be. Not yet, I said. I just need to know Maya is safe. If she is with you, I can focus. Done, Leah said. She stays with me. We will have a pizza night. I will tell her you have a plumbing emergency. It is not even a lie. Technically, I said. Thank you. Leah. I hung up and felt a weight lift. Maya was off the board. She was safe. The queen was protected. Now the pawns could fight. I went to the garage. I found a box of motion sensor floodlights I had bought on sale a year ago. I spent the next 2 hours on a ladder, mounting them on the corners of the house. I angled one specifically toward the drainage ditch and the neighbor's fence. When I was done, I tested them. The backyard lit up like a prison yard. Shadows fled. Let them try to approach the bulkhead now. I thought. Thursday came, and with it, the storm Dylan Shore had predicted. It started at noon, a gray curtain of rain sweeping across the valley. By 3 o'clock, it was a deluge. The sky turned a bruised purple-black, and the wind whipped the trees into a frenzy. I sat in the kitchen, watching the backyard. The rain was coming down in sheets, hammering against the glass. The drainage swale was doing its job. Sort of. I could see a torrent of brown water rushing along the depression in the lawn, heading toward the back fence. But then I noticed something, near the bulkhead, where the hidden access panel was buried. The water wasn't flowing. It was pooling. It was swirling in a muddy eddy, rising higher and higher against the foundation. It looked like the ground was rejecting the water. I put on my raincoat and boots. I grabbed the flashlight. I went out the back door. The wind hit me like a physical blow. The rain was freezing. I trudged through the mud toward the bulkhead. The water was 6 inches deep over the access panel, and it was bubbling. Bubbles of air were burping up from the submerged soil, breaking the surface of the puddle. Glug, glug. I knelt down, rain streaming off my hood. I put my hand into the muddy water. I could feel the vibration in the ground. It was humming, and then I heard it, the crying. But it wasn't the soft, mournful sobbing I had heard before. It was a scream. It was high-pitched, strained, mechanical. It sounded like a gasket failing. It sounded like metal grinding against metal under immense pressure. The sound cut through the noise of the wind and the rain. It was vibrating the bulkhead doors. I pulled out my phone. I had wrapped it in a Ziploc bag. I hit record on the voice memo app. I held it close to the bubbling water. Clank, clank, clank. Whoosh! The sound was violent. It was the sound of a system overwhelmed. I recorded for a full minute. Then I ran back inside, dripping wet, my heart hammering. I dried the phone off. I saved the file. I texted it to the number Dylan Shore had called me from. Recorded 5 minutes ago. Backyard flooding, bubbling from the panel. Is this what you meant? I waited. The storm raged outside. The lights flickered. 3 minutes later, a text came back. That is not your house crying. That is a bypass line under hydrostatic load. The check valve is chattering. They are pumping upstream. Upstream? I typed. They are using your property to push water, or waste, uphill to the main line. He replied, or to a retention tank. Follow the line. Hazel, see where it goes. I looked out the window. The rain was letting up slightly, shifting from a deluge to a steady soak. Follow the line. I knew the swale went under the fence. I knew it headed toward the vacant lot behind me. I went to the garage. I grabbed the bolt cutters. I didn't know if I would need them, but I wasn't going out there with just a flashlight anymore. I walked out into the backyard, the floodlights triggered, bathing the wet grass in harsh white light. I walked to the back fence. The drainage depression went right under the cedar planks. I couldn't climb over it easily, not in this mud. I walked to the gate on the side, exited my yard, and circled around the block. The vacant lot was a tangled mess of scrub oak and briars. It sat between two developed streets, a forgotten parcel of land that had never been built on. I waded into the brush. My flashlight beam cut through the mist. I found the drainage output from my yard. It was a concrete culvert, half buried in vines. Water was gushing out of it, thick and brown. But there was something else. Running alongside the concrete culvert, half exposed by the erosion of the storm, was a black corrugated pipe. It didn't end at the culvert. It kept going. It snaked through the weeds, heading deeper into the lot. I followed it. I walked for 50 yards, the brambles tearing at my raincoat. The pipe was like a black snake in the grass. It led to a clearing near the back of the lot. In the center of the clearing stood a small utility shed. It was beige, metal, unremarkable. It looked like the kind of shed the city puts up to house electrical meters or pumps. It had a small solar panel on the roof. The black pipe disappeared directly under the foundation of the shed. I walked up to it. The shed was humming, a low, powerful electrical hum. I put my hand on the metal wall. It was vibrating, and from inside, muffled but distinct, came the sound. The crying. It was loudest here. This was the source, or the destination. I walked around to the door. It was heavy steel, secured with a complex, recessed lock. There was a metal placard riveted to the door. Property of Morrow Field Holdings. Private infrastructure. No trespassing. I.D. MFH-882, Morrow Field Holdings. I took a picture of the placard. I took a video of the pipe going under the shed. I recorded the sound of the humming and the crying coming from inside. I didn't try to open it. I knew better than to touch it. I backed away, retracing my steps through the wet brush, leaving the crying shed alone in the dark. The next morning, I was back in Renee Calder's office. I put the phone on her desk and played the video. Renee watched it in silence. She watched the water bubbling. She listened to the scream. She saw the shed. Morrow Field Holdings. She said softly. She turned to her computer. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. I did some digging after you sent me the name last night. She said, Morrow Field is a ghost. No website, no office, just a P.O. box in Delaware. Of course. I said, but, Renee said, hitting a key with force. They are active. I pulled the county deed transfer records for the last 18 months. Look at this. She turned the monitor toward me. It was a spreadsheet. Grantee, Morrow Field Holdings. Date, January 12th. Property, 44 Cedar Street, distressed. Date, March 4th. Property, 108 Maple Avenue, foreclosure. Date, June 15th. Property, 89 Oakwood Drive, estate sale. There were a dozen entries, and look at the grantor on the sales. Renee said, she pointed to a column. Every single property that Morrow Field Holdings bought had a lien or a disclosure attached to it prior to the sale. Lien holder, Northline Restoration. Lien holder, Ketter Low. Lien holder, Foundation Recovery Services. It is a vertical monopoly, Renee said. Her voice was cold. They are not just flipping houses, they are manufacturing the distress. They use the restoration companies to damage the homes or create liability. Illegal drainage. Unpermitted work. They harass the owners with the noise and the threats. The owners panic and sell. And who buys the house? Morrow Field Holdings. I said, exactly. They buy it for pennies because it has structural issues. Then, because they own the restoration company, they fix the issue for free, probably just by turning off the machine in that shed, and flip the house for full market value 3 months later. It is a machine, I said. Just like the pump, it is racketeering. Renee said, it is organized fraud. She looked at the video of the shed again. That shed is the heart of it, she said. That is where they are controlling the pressure. That is where they are routing the water. If we can prove what is inside that shed, we can prove the intent to defraud. How do we get inside? I asked. It is on private property. We need probable cause, Renee said. Or we need an official inspection that forces them to open it. She picked up her phone. I am calling Dylan Shore, she said, and I'm calling your inspector. Henderson. We are going to schedule the walkthrough. Not a request this time, a demand. She looked at me. We are going to do it in broad daylight. Hazel. We are going to invite the city, the county, and anyone else who will listen. We are going to force them to open that door while the sun is shining. When? I asked. Monday, she said. Noon? Monday, I repeated. I thought of the 3 days between now and Monday. 3 nights of the crying. 3 nights of the man in the gray jacket potentially watching. I can do Monday, I said. Renee reached across the desk and put her hand on mine. Her grip was firm. You are not alone in this anymore. Hazel, we have them. We just need to turn the lights on. I nodded. I left the office and drove back to Maple Hollow. The storm had passed, leaving the sky a brilliant, innocent blue. The puddles were drying up. I pulled into my driveway. Tessa's house was quiet. The sign was still there. I walked to my backyard. I looked at the access panel. It was just a piece of metal in the dirt again. Silent. But I knew what it was connected to now. I knew the silver thread that ran from my yard to the shed in the woods. I went inside and locked the door. I walked to the calendar on the wall. I took a red marker and circled Monday. Then I wrote 3 words inside the circle. Stop digging. Hazel. I stared at them. No, I whispered. I picked up the marker again. I drew a line through the words, and underneath, I wrote, Show them the shovel. Monday morning arrived with the heavy, gray stillness of a held breath. I was dressed and ready by 8 o'clock, wearing my best blazer and the kind of boots that said I was prepared to walk through mud or kick down a door. I sat at the kitchen table, my phone placed squarely in the center of the placemat, waiting for the confirmation call from the city engineering office. Renee Calder had filed the demand. Dylan Shore had pulled the file. Today was supposed to be the day we walked into the vacant lot with official clipboards and forced the truth into the sunlight. At 8:15, the phone rang. I picked it up on the first ring. Hazel Bryant. I said, Ms. Bryant, this is the administrative assistant for the Department of Public Works. I gripped the phone tighter. Yes. Is Dylan on his way? I am afraid there has been a schedule adjustment, the voice said. It was smooth, professional, and completely hollow. Mr. Shore has been reassigned to an emergency infrastructure assessment in the North County. He is unavailable for the site visit today. Reassigned? I repeated. We have a confirmed appointment. My lawyer filed a formal request. I understand. The assistant said, however, emergency infrastructure takes precedence. We will reach out to reschedule when his calendar clears. When will that be? It is hard to say. The North County project is extensive. Have a nice day, Ms. Bryant. The line clicked dead. I sat there, staring at the wall. They hadn't just canceled. They had removed the player from the board. Reassigned. It was a bureaucratic way of saying silenced. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from a number I did not recognize, but I knew immediately who it was. They pulled me off. Do not go alone. They are watching the lot. I felt a surge of cold anger. It wasn't fear anymore. It was the sharp, metallic taste of injustice. They could move city engineers like chess pieces. They could erase appointments. I was still staring at the text when the doorbell rang. I stood up, smoothing my blazer. I walked to the door, checking the camera feed first. A courier van was idling in the driveway. A man in a brown uniform was standing on the porch, holding a thick, rigid cardboard envelope. I opened the door. Hazel Bryant? He asked. Yes. Sign here. I scribbled my name on his digital pad. He handed me the envelope and walked away without a word. I closed the door and looked at the return address. There wasn't one, just a label that said Priority Dispatch. I ripped the tab and slid the contents out onto the kitchen counter. It was a glossy, high-definition presentation folder. The cover featured a stock photo of a happy family running through a sun-drenched meadow. Unrelated to any reality I was currently living, embossed in gold foil at the bottom were the words, Harbor Vane Residential. I opened the folder. Inside was a single, personalized letter printed on heavy linen stock and a purchase agreement. Dear Ms. Bryant, we understand that homeownership can sometimes become a burden, especially with older properties requiring complex maintenance. Harbor Vane Residential specializes in providing liquidity to owners who value speed and convenience over the hassle of the open market. We have assessed your property at 1142 Oakwood Drive and are prepared to offer an all-cash, as is purchase, no inspections needed, no repairs required. Quick close-in as little as 7 days. Offer price, $210,000. I stared at the number, $210,000. It was exactly 60% of what the house was worth. It was a lowball offer, an insult wrapped in gold foil, but it was also a lifeline. If I signed this, the crying would stop. The man in the gray jacket would disappear. The compliance reviews would vanish. I could take the check, pick up Maya, and move to an apartment in the next town. I could be safe. It wasn't an offer. It was a ransom note. No inspections needed. Of course not. They knew exactly what was wrong with the house because they were the ones doing it. They didn't need to inspect the damage they had manufactured. I felt a sudden, violent urge to tear the glossy paper into confetti. It felt like a door opening that was actually a shove. They were holding the door for me, smiling, while their other hand held a knife to my back. I did not tear it up. Instead, I put it back in the envelope. I wrote evidence on the front in black marker and added it to my file. Evan Pike came by an hour later. He didn't have his mower. He looked nervous. His hood pulled up despite the mild weather. He knocked on the back door, avoiding the front porch camera. I let him in. He stood in the kitchen, shifting his weight. I saw them again. He said, "When?" "This morning. Early. Like 5:30. I was driving my dad to the train station, and I took the shortcut past the vacant lot." He pulled his phone out of his pocket. His screen was cracked, but the image was clear enough. It was a photo taken through a windshield. The lighting was gray and grainy, pre-dawn. In the photo, the white work van was parked deep in the weeds of the vacant lot, backed up almost to the utility shed. The back doors of the van were open. Standing next to the shed was a figure. It was hard to make out the face, but the posture was rigid. The person was holding a long, narrow black case. "It looks like a gun case," Evan whispered, like a rifle case. I zoomed in on the image. It was rectangular, hard shell, about 4 feet long, or a survey tripod. I said, trying to be rational, or specialized tools, maybe, Evan said. But the way he was holding it, he was hugging it. And look at the van. I looked closer at the van in the photo. There was no logo. The side was completely white. They peeled the sticker off. Evan said, "It was Northline last week. Now it is nothing. They are scrubbing it. Why would they be there at 5 in the morning?" I asked. To switch something out? Evan suggested. To hide something before the city inspection? Maybe they knew the engineer was coming today before you did. The thought made my stomach turn. Of course they knew. They probably owned the person who reassigned Dylan Shore. "Can you send this to me?" I asked. Evan tapped his screen. "Sent? Miss Bryant? Are you going to sell?" I saw the courier truck. I looked at this kid, who had inadvertently walked into a crime scene just by trying to mow a lawn. "No, Evan," I said, "I am not selling. I am digging in." I spent the afternoon transforming my house. For weeks, I had been reacting. I had been the woman in the horror movie who hears a noise and asks, "Who's there?" into the darkness. I had been waiting for them to scare me. I was done waiting. If they wanted to treat my home like a chessboard, I was going to start moving pieces. I drove to the electronics store 3 towns over. I bought 4 trail cameras, the kind hunters use to track deer. They were motion-activated, night vision enabled, and battery-operated. They didn't rely on Wi-Fi, which meant they couldn't be jammed or hacked remotely. I also bought a sign, a large, reflective metal sign. I came home and went to work. I mounted 2 of the trail cameras high in the oak tree in my backyard, angling them down toward the fence line and the drainage swale. I camouflaged them with duct tape and leaves. I mounted the 3rd camera low, hidden inside the hollow stump of an old maple tree near the property line. The 4th camera I placed inside the basement, hidden behind a stack of storage bins, pointed directly at the bulkhead doors. Then, I walked to the back fence. I took the metal sign and nailed it to the cedar post right where the drainage depression passed under the wood. I used 6-inch lag bolts. I wanted it to be impossible to remove without a crowbar. No trespassing video surveillance in progress. All violations prosecuted. It wasn't a warning for them to stay away. I knew a sign wouldn't stop them. It was a legal bear trap. By crossing that line after the sign was posted, they were no longer just conducting unauthorized repairs. They were committing criminal trespass with intent. I was baiting them to cross it so I could film them doing it. I stood back and looked at my work. The sign gleamed aggressively in the afternoon sun. "Come on," I whispered. "Come and fix your pipes. At 4 o'clock. I met Renee Calder at a coffee shop on the other side of the county. She wasn't alone. Sitting across from her was a woman with sharp features and hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. She was typing on a laptop with a speed that seemed almost violent. "Hazel." "This is Simone Hart," Renee said. "She is an investigative journalist with the State Chronicle." Simone stopped typing and looked at me. Her eyes were dark and assessing. She didn't smile, but she nodded. "Renee says you have a noise problem that comes with a purchase offer." Simone said, "I sat down. I have a fraud problem." I said, "I slid the Harbor Vane packet across the table. And a racketeering problem." Simone opened the packet. She scanned the letter, her eyebrows lifting slightly when she saw the price. "Classic squeeze," she murmured. She looked up at me. "I have been tracking a pattern of these for 6 months. Different towns, different shell companies, but the rhythm is always the same. Suburbs, single owners, infrastructure failure, quick sale. Has anyone fought back?" I asked. "A few tried," Simone said, "but they usually get buried in legal fees or they get scared. One guy in Oak Creek had his car tires slashed 3 nights in a row. He sold the next week. I am not selling." I said. Simone looked at me for a long moment. Then she closed the laptop. Renee showed me the video of the shed. She said, "And the recording of the screaming. That is good. That is visceral. But we need more. We need the connection. We need to prove that the people making the noise and the people buying the house are shaking hands. I have a picture of the van at the shed. I said, and I have the permit denial with the fake case number. Simone nodded. Good. But we need a whistleblower. We need someone from the inside who can say, yes, I was told to bury that pipe, or, yes, I was told to delete that file. I thought for a moment. I thought of the one person who had been acting strange from the beginning, the person who had warned me not to start a fight. I might have someone. I said, Marla Winslow's real estate office was closing when I arrived. The receptionist was already turning off the lights. I pushed past the front desk and went straight to Marla's glass-walled office in the back. She was packing up her bag. She looked up, startled. When I walked in, Hazel, she said, I did not know you were coming. We need to talk. Marla, I said, I cannot. Hazel, I told you, I have to go. She tried to brush past me, but I stepped into her path. I wasn't physically imposing, but I was vibrating with an intensity that made her pause. They offered me $210,000. Marla, I said. Marla stopped. She looked at me, her face pale. Harbor Vane, she whispered. Yes, Harbor Vane, the company that doesn't exist. Marla closed her eyes. She gripped the strap of her purse with both hands. I did not know it would be them, she said softly. I swear. When I sold you the house, I thought it was fixed. Northline said they fixed it, but you knew there was a problem. I said, you knew about the invoice. You knew about the permit that didn't match. Marla looked around the empty office. She walked back to her desk and sat down heavily, as if her legs had given out. It was 4 years ago. She said, the market was hot. Everyone was rushing. I had a listing on Elm Street, beautiful colonial. Northline had done work on it. I went to the town hall to pull the certificate of occupancy, and I saw the clerk, Marla said. Not the lady at the window, the supervisor, the guy with the short tie. I nodded. I knew him. I saw him with a guy from Northline. Marla said, they were in the back room. The door was open a crack. The Northline guy handed him a thick envelope, and the supervisor opened a file, the file for the Elm Street house, and ripped a page out. He just ripped it out and put it in the shredder. Marla's voice was shaking. I walked away. She said, I pretended I didn't see it. But later, when I got the docs for your house, I saw the Northline code, and I saw the weird permit number. I knew it was the same thing. I knew it was unregistered work. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. My voice was quiet, but it was hard, because I was scared. Hazel, she hissed the words. You do not understand. These people, they control the inspections. They control the appraisals. If I get blacklisted by the Restoration Network, I cannot sell houses in this town. My career is over. Your career? I said. They are terrorizing my daughter's home. They are pumping sewage through my backyard. Marla put her face in her hands. I am sorry. She wept. I am so sorry. I stood there, looking at this woman who had sold me a lie because she was afraid of the truth. I felt a twinge of pity, but mostly I felt determination. Help me. I said. Marla looked up. How? You kept something. I said, people like you always keep something, just in case you need leverage. Marla hesitated. Then she reached into the bottom drawer of her desk. She pulled out a small, battered day planner from 4 years ago. She flipped through the pages and pulled out a folded piece of thermal fax paper. It was yellowed with age. I stole this off the fax machine. She said, it came in by mistake one morning. It was meant for the title company, but it routed to our main line. I took the paper. It was an internal memo from Northline Restoration to a recipient listed only as M.F. Admin. Subject, Oakwood Drive, stabilization. Note, hardware installed, bypass active, permit number M-RES-9902 generated internally, do not file with municipality. Keep off official ledger. It was the smoking gun. Generated internally, they were admitting the permit was fake. Thank you. Marla. I said, I am scared. Hazel, she whispered. So am I. I said, but I'm done hiding it. I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at the facts. I took a picture of it and sent it to Renee and Simone. My phone rang. It was Maya. I took a deep breath. I forced the tension out of my shoulders. I put a smile on my face that she couldn't see, hoping it would translate through my voice. "Hey, sweetie," I said. "How is the trip?" "Mom, it is so cool," she shouted. The background noise was a cacophony of middle school excitement. "We went to the Air and Space Museum. I saw a moon rock. And tonight, we are going on a ghost tour of Alexandria." "A ghost tour?" I asked. "That sounds spooky. It is not real ghosts." "Mom," she said, laughing, "it is just stories." I felt a sharp pang in my chest. It is just stories. I wish that were true. I wish the ghosts in our house were just stories, not men with drills and shell companies. "Are you having fun?" I asked. "So much fun. But I miss you. Are you okay? You sound tired." "I'm just working hard," I said, "getting the house ready for when you come back." "Did you fix the leak? Leah said you had a plumbing emergency." "Yes," I said, "I am fixing it. It is going to be good as new." "Okay, love you. Mom, love you too. Baby, be safe." I hung up. The silence of the car rushed back in. I put my head on the steering wheel and cried. I cried for 2 minutes, hard, silent sobs that shook my frame. I cried because I was lying to her. I cried because I was fighting a war to protect a sanctuary that had already been breached. I cried because the weight of being the only thing standing between her and the world was suddenly crushing. Then, I stopped. I wiped my face. I checked my makeup in the rearview mirror. I started the car. I had a trap to check. I parked down the street and walked to my house, entering through the front door. I didn't turn on the lights. I moved through the dark rooms by memory. I went to the kitchen and opened the laptop I had set up to monitor the trail cameras. The screen showed 4 feeds. The backyard was a landscape of gray and green night vision. The sign stood out, bright and reflective. No trespassing. I sat there, drinking cold water, watching the screen. 9 o'clock. Nothing. 10 o'clock. Nothing. 11 o'clock. A raccoon triggered camera 2, scuttling along the fence. Midnight. I was starting to doze off when the laptop chimed. A soft ping. Motion detected on camera 3. The low camera in the stump. I leaned forward. On the screen, 2 figures were moving through the high grass of the vacant lot. They were approaching the fence line. They were dressed in dark clothes. Hoodies up. They weren't carrying flashlights. They were moving by the ambient light of the moon. Confident. Practiced. They reached the fence. They stopped at the drainage depression. One of them pointed at the new sign. I could see the white vapor of their breath. They were whispering. Then, the taller figure shrugged. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tool. It looked like a cordless drill. He stepped over the property line. He stepped past the sign. "Got you," I whispered. He moved toward the access panel buried in the grass. The second figure followed. Carrying a small black case, they knelt down by the bulkhead. I waited. I wanted them to start working. I wanted the act of modification on camera. The tall man brushed the dirt away from the panel. He fit the drill to the screws. I hit the button on my phone that controlled the smart plugs in the garage. Click! The backyard exploded with light. The 4 floodlights I had mounted on the corners of the house blazed to life. 5,000 lumens of harsh, white LEDs. The 2 men froze. It was almost comical. They looked like deer caught in headlights, their bodies rigid, hands caught in mid-motion. They looked up at the house. They looked at the cameras in the trees, which I had made sure were just visible enough to be seen when the lights were on. They didn't pull guns. They didn't charge the house. They scrambled. The tall man dropped the drill. He fumbled for it, grabbed it, and they both turned and ran. They scrambled back under the fence, slipping in the mud, crashing through the brush of the vacant lot like terrified teenagers. They weren't monsters. They were employees, and they had just been exposed. I watched them disappear into the dark. I saved the footage. I backed it up to 3 different cloud servers. I emailed a copy to Renee. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat by the window, watching the empty yard, the floodlights turning the grass into a stage where the play had finished. But the audience was still waiting. Morning revealed the pettiness of their malice. I went out at 7 a.m. to inspect the scene. The grass was trampled where they had run. The mud was churned up. I walked to the access panel. They hadn't had time to open it. The screws were still tight. But looking closely, I saw something that made my blood boil. The screws were different. Yesterday, they had been silver Phillips heads. Today, they were star drive security screws. The kind you need a special bit to remove. They hadn't come to open the panel. They had come to lock me out of it. They knew I had looked. They knew I was bringing an inspector. So they had come in the night to swap the hardware, making it impossible for a standard screwdriver to open the hatch. And there was something else. Running from the panel, down the swale, and under the fence was a thin, brownish line in the grass. It wasn't mud. I touched it. It was slimy. It smelled of raw sewage and industrial solvent. They had purged the line. Before they ran, or perhaps earlier in the evening before I started watching, they had flushed the system. They had dumped whatever was in that shed through my yard to clear the evidence before the official inspection could happen. I stood up, wiping my hand on the grass. They thought they were clever. They thought that by changing the screws and flushing the line, they could hide the truth. But they had left the stain. I took a picture of the screws. I took a picture of the sludge line. Then I called Simone Hart. "It is time," I said when she answered. "Did you get them?" she asked. "I got them on video." I said, "But they changed the locks on the ground. They are trying to seal it up." "Good," Simone said. "That means they are panicking." I looked at the vacant lot, at the tangled brush hiding the shed. "I do not want to walk through." "Simone," I said, "I want a raid. I am way ahead of you." She said, "I just got off the phone with the state EPA. I sent them your video of the bubbling water. They are very interested in why a residential property is discharging industrial runoff. When can they get here?" "Tomorrow," she said. "But Hazel, we are going to make a scene. I am bringing a photographer. We are going to notify the town council an hour before we arrive, so they have to show up or look complicit. Do it," I said. I looked at the no trespassing sign. It was crooked now, bumped by the fleeing men. I walked over and straightened it. "Bring everyone," I said. "I want them to see what is in the basement." I went back inside. The house was quiet. The crying had stopped for now. The purge was complete. But the silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like the deep breath before a scream. I walked to the kitchen counter and picked up the red marker. I walked to the calendar. I looked at the date for tomorrow. I wrote, "The truth." Then I packed my bag, not to leave, but to stay. I put the kettle on. I was going to need coffee. A lot of it, the lawn guy had called while my daughter was away. He had heard crying. Tomorrow. The whole world was going to hear it. The school bus yellow was the brightest thing I had seen in a week. It turned the corner onto Oakwood Drive. The air brakes hissing a heavy sigh as it stopped in front of my driveway. I stood on the porch, my hands clasped so tight my knuckles were white. I forced them to relax. I forced my shoulders down. I put on the smile I had practiced in the bathroom mirror for 20 minutes. The doors opened, and Maya hopped down. She was wearing her oversized hoodie and carrying a backpack that looked heavy enough to tip her over. She spotted me and grinned. That gap-toothed, preteen grin that was the center of my universe. "Mom!" she yelled. She ran up the driveway, dropping her bag on the grass. I caught her halfway, burying my face in her hair. She smelled like stale bus air, pretzel dust, and childhood. She felt solid. She felt real. For the last 6 days, I had been living in a world of ghosts, recordings, and unseen men in vans. Holding her was like waking up from a fever dream. "Did you miss me?" she asked, muffled against my coat. "You have no idea," I said. I squeezed her one last time, then pulled back. "Let me look at you. You look taller. Did you grow in D.C.? "Maybe," she said, rolling her eyes. "Can we go inside? I need to charge my phone." "Actually," I said, keeping my voice light, pitch perfect, "I have a surprise. Leah is on her way over. Aunt Leah? Maya asked, her face lighting up. She is taking you to that new arcade complex in Westbury. I said, the one with the laser tag, and then pizza. Seriously? Maya asked. But I just got home. I know. I said, but I have to do this boring inspection thing with the city today. Remember the plumbing issue? It is going to be loud and dull, and there are going to be men in suits walking around the yard pointing at dirt. I did not want you to be bored. Maya shrugged, the resilience of youth already accepting the new plan. Okay, can I get a soda? Unlimited soda, I said. 10 minutes later, Leah Mercer's SUV pulled up. Leah got out, wearing sunglasses and a look of grim determination that she softened the moment she saw Maya. Hey, Globetrotter, Leah shouted. Get in. We are going to destroy some zombies. Maya grabbed her backpack and ran to the car. Leah looked at me over the roof of the vehicle. She lowered her sunglasses. You okay? She mouthed. I nodded. I tapped my pocket, where my phone, and the evidence, sat heavy. Go, I said. Keep her close. I will bring her back at 8. Leah said. Good luck. Hazel, kill the dragon. I watched them drive away until the SUV was just a speck at the end of the road. The silence rushed back in, but it did not feel empty this time. It felt cleared. The deck was cleared. I turned back to the house. I checked my watch. It was 11:45. The dragon was coming. At noon, the street looked like a staging ground for a small invasion. Renee Calder arrived first, her sedan looking fierce and practical. She stepped out carrying a thick accordion folder. Next came Simone Hart, driving a hatchback with a press pass hanging from the rearview mirror. She had a man with her, a cameraman named Ben who looked bored but competent, lugging a shoulder camera and a boom mic. Mr. Henderson, my inspector, parked his truck across the street. He got out, wearing his vest and hard hat, looking like he was ready to condemn a skyscraper. We gathered in my driveway. Are we ready? Renee asked. I nodded. I felt a strange calm settling over me. My hands were steady. Simone turned to Ben. Start rolling. The red light on the camera blinked on. We walked around the side of the house to the backyard. The grass was still damp from the storm, but the sun was shining with a cruel, interrogating brightness. We walked past the access panel, the one with the new security screws, and straight to the back fence. The no trespassing sign I had hung glinted in the light. Beyond it, the vacant lot was quiet. The shed stood in the distance, beige and innocuous in the weeds. Renee took out her phone. She dialed a number and put it on speaker, holding it up for the camera to hear. Department of Public Works. A voice answered. This is Renee Calder, representing Hazel Bryant of 1142 Oakwood Drive, Renee said, her voice projecting clearly. We are currently on site for the scheduled drainage inspection. We are waiting for the city engineer. Ms. Calder, the voice said, sounding clipped. As we informed Ms. Bryant, Mr. Shore has been reassigned. We do not have anyone available to... We are proceeding with a third-party inspection due to critical infrastructure failure and health hazards. Renee interrupted. We are formally notifying you that we are entering the easement to verify the source of the unauthorized discharge. You do not have authorization to access private. We are entering the easement. Renee repeated, we are doing the job the city refused to do. She hung up. Let the record show. She said to the camera that the municipality refused to appear. We stepped over the property line. We walked through the drainage swale, the mud squelching under our boots. We approached the shed. I could hear it humming, a low electric vibration. But before we could get within 10 feet, a black sedan tore around the corner of the adjacent street. It bumped up over the curb, driving directly onto the vacant lot, crushing the weeds. It screeched to a halt between us and the shed. The door flew open. A man stepped out. He was in his 40s, wearing a suit that cost more than my car. He was polished, tan, and projected an air of aggressive inconvenience. He held up a hand, palm out. Stop right there, he shouted. He walked toward us, not looking at the camera, focused entirely on me and Renee. This is private property, he said, His voice was smooth, practiced. I am Arthur Sterling, representing Morrowfield Holdings. You are trespassing. I need you to leave immediately, or I will call the police. We are here for an inspection. I said, Mr. Sterling looked at me. He gave a small, pitying smile. Miss Bryant, right? He said. Look, I understand you are upset. I understand you have been hearing noises. Old houses can be stressful. Single motherhood is stressful. But dragging a circus out here onto private land is not the way to handle your anxiety. My anxiety? I asked. We have reports that you have been harassing our maintenance crews, Sterling said, putting up signs, filming workers. It is paranoid behavior. Ms. Bryant, we are trying to improve the neighborhood infrastructure, and you are acting like we are attacking you. He turned to the camera. Please turn that off. You do not have permission to film here. Simone stepped forward. I am standing on an easement. Mr. Sterling, and this is a matter of public health. Keep rolling. Ben, Sterling sighed. He adjusted his cufflinks. There is no public health issue, he said. That shed houses a standard irrigation lift station. It is locked for safety. Now, please, go home. Go take a nap. Miss Bryant, you look exhausted. It was the tone, the dismissal. Go take a nap. As if I were a toddler throwing a tantrum. I felt the anger ignite, hot and pure. I stepped forward. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I opened the file folder I was holding. I am not tired. Mr. Sterling, I said, I am informed. I pulled out the first photo. This is a time-stamped image from my security camera, taken 2 nights ago at midnight. I said, it shows 2 men entering this lot with a drill. Sterling glanced at it, unimpressed. Maintenance crews work late. I pulled out the second photo. This is the access panel in my yard. I said, your crew changed the screws to security heads to prevent me from opening it. Why would you lock a homeowner out of their own drainage cleanout? Standard safety protocol, Sterling said, looking bored, to keep people from tampering. I pulled out the third document, the fax from Marla. This is an internal memo from Northline Restoration, your contractor, dated 4 years ago. I said, it references a permit number, M-RES-9-9-0-2. Sterling blinked. His mask slipped, just for a fraction of a second. The town clerk confirmed that this permit number does not exist. I said, the memo says, generated internally, do not file. That is fraud. Mr. Sterling, that is falsifying municipal records. That is a clerical error, Sterling said. His voice was tighter now. I pulled out the final piece. I held up my phone. I played the audio recording. The scream. Eeeeee! The sound cut through the air of the vacant lot. It was loud, warped, and terrifying. Sterling flinched. That is not irrigation, I said. And this. I held up the screenshot of Dylan Shore's text. They pulled me off. Do not go alone. This is the city engineer telling me that he was removed from this case because he asked too many questions. I said, I looked Sterling in the eye. You are not improving infrastructure. You are burying a crime, and you are using my house to do it. Sterling looked at the camera, then at me. The pitying smile was gone. His face was cold, hard flint. You have no idea what you're talking about, he hissed. You are inviting a lawsuit that will bankrupt you. Open the shed, I said. Sterling laughed. A short, sharp bark. No, open it, or we cut the lock, Henderson said. He stepped forward, holding a pair of heavy bolt cutters. I am a licensed structural inspector. I have probable cause to believe there is an unpermitted pressure vessel inside that structure that poses an immediate explosion hazard. You touch that lock, and I will have you arrested, Sterling said. Simone Hart stepped in. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice pleasant. I am live streaming this to the Chronicle's Facebook page. We have 4,000 people watching right now. Do you really want to explain to them why you are afraid to open a utility shed? Sterling froze. He looked at the camera lens, realizing the red light was a live eye. He looked at the shed. He looked at his car. He did the calculus of a man who knows when the optics have turned fatal. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a key ring. "Fine." He spat. "You want to see a pump? I will show you a pump, and then I will sue you for defamation." He walked to the shed. He jammed the key into the recessed lock. He turned it. He threw the heavy steel door open. The sound hit us first. It wasn't the scream. It was the mechanical chugging of a diesel generator running on low idle, and the high-pitched whine of an electric turbine. We crowded around the door. Ben aimed the camera into the gloom. The shed was not empty. It was packed with machinery. In the center sat a massive, black iron pump, bolted to the concrete slab. Thick pipes snaked out of it, disappearing into the floor. But it was the bypass assembly that caught my eye. Connected to the main output pipe was a smaller, translucent plastic tube. It was routed through a series of constrictor valves, narrow metal collars that squeezed the tube down to a fraction of an inch. Water was pulsing through the tube, dark, murky water. As we watched, the pump cycled. A surge of pressure hit the line. The water was forced through the constrictor. The plastic tube vibrated. It acted like a reed in a woodwind instrument. The constriction caused the air mixed with the water to shriek as it passed through the narrow gap. Then, the pressure dropped. The valve fluttered. The moan. It was exactly the sound I had heard in my basement. It was the sound Evan had heard in the grass. Henderson stepped inside. He pointed his flashlight at the assembly. "Look at this," he said. He pointed to a small black box attached to the side of the pipe. It was a solenoid valve, an electronic timer. "It is on a randomizer." Henderson said, "It isn't just pumping when the water level gets high. This timer is set to pulse the pressure at irregular intervals. 3 bursts, then silence, then a long wail." I stared at the black box. It wasn't a byproduct of a bad repair. It wasn't a mistake. It was an instrument. They built it to make that noise. I whispered. Sterling was standing by the door, his arms crossed. "It is a pressure release," he said defensively, "to prevent backflow. It is a synthesizer." Henderson said, "You are forcing air through a baffle to create resonance. This system is designed to create low-frequency vibrations that travel through ground pipes. It is designed to shake the houses connected to the line." I looked at the pipe disappearing into the floor. It headed straight for my property line. "You made it cry," I said. I turned to Sterling. "You built a machine to make my house scream so I would sell it to you for cheap." Sterling did not answer. He looked at his watch. I felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't supernatural. It was so much worse. It was corporate sadism. They had terrorized me, my daughter, and my neighbors with a plumbing fixture and a timer. They had monetized fear. Simone turned to Sterling. "Mr. Sterling, is this standard practice for Morrow Field Holdings? Installing noise-generating bypasses on residential lines?" Sterling turned his back on the camera. "Inspection is over," he said. "Get off the property." He walked to his car. He didn't run, but he walked fast. He got in, slammed the door, and reversed out of the lot, throwing mud from his tires. We stood there, listening to the machine hum. Henderson reached over and flipped a large red switch on the wall. The humming stopped. The vibration ceased. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the first true silence I had heard in months. The police arrived 20 minutes later. They were not the local Maple Hollow cops. They were state troopers, called in by the EPA contact Simone had alerted. They taped off the shed. They took statements. They looked at the video footage. I stood by the fence, watching them work. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me shaking and cold. Simone walked over to me. She looked tired, but triumphant. "We got it," she said. "The live stream went viral locally. People are already commenting from 3 other neighborhoods saying they hear the same thing. This is going to blow the lid off." "Who was he?" I asked. "Sterling?" Simone looked at her notes. "I ran his plate," she said. "He is a mid-level lawyer for a holding firm in the city. He is a fixer. He is not the money." "Who is the money?" Simone sighed. She pointed to the clipboard the trooper was holding. "He had seized the maintenance log from the shed. I got a look at the log before they bagged it," she said. The signatory for the maintenance schedule? It is a Shell LLC, registered in the Cayman Islands. The name on the incorporation papers is a man who died 3 years ago, so we don't know who did it. I said, "We know the mechanism." Simone said, "We know the method. But the architect? The person sitting at the top of the pyramid who decided to weaponize drainage pipes? They are insulated, layer upon layer of paper." I looked at the shed. The door was open, revealing the ugly iron heart of the scam. "They will throw Sterling under the bus." Simone said, "They will say he was a rogue contractor. They will pay a fine. They will dissolve Morrow Field Holdings and start a new company tomorrow called Blue Sky Assets or something." "So they win?" I asked. Simone looked at me. "They lose the shadows," she said. "That is what we took from them. They can't do this here anymore. Not in Maple Hollow." "You saved this street." Hazel, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like surviving a shipwreck only to realize the ocean was still full of sharks. "Do you want me to run the story?" Simone asked. "I can redact your name. I can call you Jane Doe." I thought about the man in the gray jacket. I thought of the note on my car. "Stop digging." "Hazel, if I hid my name, I was still playing by their rules. I was still acting afraid." "Run it." I said, "Use my name. Use the address. Are you sure? I want them to know who beat them." I said. That evening, the house was quiet. Truly quiet. I picked up Maya from Leah's house. She was full of pizza and stories about her zombie-killing high score. She didn't notice that my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. She didn't notice the police cruiser parked discreetly down the block, a favor from the state troopers for a few nights. We got home. I locked the door. "Did the inspection go okay?" Maya asked, flopping onto the couch. "Yeah," I said. "It went okay. We found the problem. Is the plumbing fixed?" "Yes," I said. "It is fixed. No more noises." "Awesome," she said. She turned on the TV. I went into the kitchen. I made a cup of tea. I stood by the window, looking out at the backyard. The floodlights were off. The cameras were still recording, but there was nothing to see. Just grass, just a fence. The shed in the distance was dark, wrapped in yellow police tape. I felt a vibration in my pocket. My phone. I pulled it out. It wasn't a text from Evan. It wasn't an email from Renee. It was a text from a number I didn't know. The area code was from the city. I opened it. "You did good." I stared at the words. My heart skipped a beat. "Now, ask who sold you the silence." I read it again. "Who sold you the silence?" It wasn't a threat. It was a prompt. I thought of Marla Winslow. I thought of the town clerk. I thought of the neighbors who had moved away. But then I thought of something else. I thought of the day I bought the house, the way the price had been just low enough to be affordable, the way the inspection had been so clean. Except for that one invoice, "Who sold you the silence?" The message implied that someone close to me, someone I trusted, or someone I had relied on, had been part of the transaction. Was it Marla? I had forced her to confess, but had she told me everything? Or was it someone else? I looked at the phone. I didn't reply. I wasn't done. The machine was off. But the operator was still out there, and whoever sent this text, they were watching. They were either a friend inside the system or an enemy playing a deeper game. I took a sip of tea. It was hot, bitter, and grounding. I walked into the living room and sat down next to Maya. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I put my arm around her. I looked at the dark window. I am Hazel Bryant. I thought, I am a mother. I am a homeowner. And I am the woman who broke the machine. Let them text. Let them watch. I wasn't going anywhere. Thank you so much for listening to I Hear Crying from your basement. It has been a journey walking through the dark corridors of Maple Hollow with Hazel. And I hope her fight for the truth resonated with you. I would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below letting me know where in the world you are listening from. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this story and want more tales of suspense, justice, and the secrets hidden in everyday lives, please make sure to subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel. And finally, I want to know your thoughts. Who do you think sent that final text message? Was it a friend or a new foe? Share your theories in the comments in English. Stay safe, stay curious, and always check your basement.